you're a slave in the 1830s, and you want to cross a bridge, like the one behind me, that connects Alabama to Georgia. And what if you were alone, by yourself, in a society that feared slave uprising so much that they tightly controlled the movement of slaves? How would you do it? You probably wouldn't even try. Well, if you were a man by the name of Horace King, it'd be a bit easier. If anyone stopped you, you could simply tell them, "I built it." Horace King's life was a great model to study the relationship between rights and responsibilities. He earned a level of personal rights during his time, place, and history, which is very rare. During our National History Day topic, you will learn how Horace King took responsibility for himself, was given responsibility by others, and had a large system of personal rights even though he was a slave. You'll also see how Horace King uses responsibilities wisely, but how it wasn't easy to do because of the turbulent times. Horace King was born in 1807 as a triracial slave, a mix of African American, Native American, and Caucasian. In his early years, it was a responsibility that Horace King took for his own education and skills as an engineer that led him to be able to experience greater rights than most slaves of his time. Not much is known about Horace King's first 23 years, but in 1830 he was purchased by a contractor by the name of John Godwin. It would be the relationship between these two men, King and Godwin, that will define the history of Columbus, Georgia, and Phoenix City forever. The men met here in Cheraw, South Carolina in the 1820s, when Ithiel Town was building a bridge across the Petee River. It was here, at that time, that two important things happened. First, King learned about bridge building techniques, and most importantly, about the town lattice truss, which was a series of triangles that made for a strong structure. King would later use the town lattice truss design on many of his major bridges. As it turns out, there is still one of his bridges standing in Woodbury, Georgia. Let's go there now. Hi, I'm here at the Red Oak Creek Covered Bridge. This bridge was built by Horace King in the 1840s. It is the longest covered bridge in Georgia. This is a town lattice truss design that Horace King used. This had about 2,500 pegs in it. There are only wooden pegs. There are no metal pegs on this structure. John Godwin saw something special in Horace King's engineering ability in Cheraw, South Carolina, and the two were on their way at having a deeper relationship than just master and slave. Horace King took responsibility for his education and studied bridge building techniques and engineering principles in his early years. He went from not having built a bridge at all when John Godwin purchased him in 1830 to, according to the 1874 Albany Patriot newspaper article, being well known for his intelligence and skills as a mechanic, which is displayed in many of his important bridges in this section. It shows that Horace King took responsibility for what he could as a slave. It is remarkable that Horace King appeared in newspapers so often because it was very rare for a slave to become so well known at that time period. How does an unknown slave go from obscurity to becoming one of the most well-known bridge builders of his time? The answer is right here. In fact, I'm sitting on it. This is the foundation of the Dillingham Street Bridge. In 1832, John Godwin and Horace King built this bridge. This was important for the cotton commerce of Alabama so that they could bring their cotton over to Georgia and sell it. It was because a young slave took responsibility to learn advanced engineering principles that it happened. Ironically, that first bridge didn't last very long. It was completed in September of 1833, and 6.5 years later, on March 10th, 1840, a flood called Harrison's Freshet, named after the newly elected president William Henry Harrison, carried it 8 miles downriver. But it was long enough to cement Columbus as an important city in the South, and Horace King is a well-known name. It also gave John Godwin the confidence to allow Horace King the freedom to travel on his own and even make business decisions. Because of this, a remarkable thing happened. King, because of the responsibility he took and that was given to him, became viewed not just as a slave to John Godwin, but also a business partner with all the rights that come with it. By the early 1840s, Horace King, as a partner with John Godwin, had built bridges and structures all over the South. And, with every project, his name and legend grew. He was celebrated and complimented in newspaper articles all over Georgia and Alabama. He built warehouses in Apalachicola, Florida, bridges across the Chattahoochee in Eufaula and Florence, even courthouses in Columbus and Russell County. And it was because of this freedom that Horace King was able to do something as simple as travel through the South and cross over the bridges he built alone. From 1843 to 1845, Horace King traveled and worked on his own in Columbus, Mississippi, and Wetumpka, Alabama. It was because of this that Horace King met Robert Jimson, Jr., an entrepreneur and legislator in Alabama. Jimson saw King's skills as a bridge builder, which was in very short supply in the South. And it was because of the way Horace King took responsibility for himself and managed his newly found rights that a remarkable thing happened. Here at the Alabama legislature in 1846, Jimson passed a bill to get Horace King his freedom. Or more accurately, the bill emancipated King and allowed him to stay in the South. King still had to take responsibility to buy his freedom with the money he earned from building bridges. But the bill allowed him to remain in southern states and continue to build structures that would allow the South to grow. This gave him rights in the South that not many freed slaves had. Horace King took responsibility not only for himself but also others. Toward the end of his life, John Godwin was poor. Horace King more than likely gave him financial support and his family. Then, Horace King shocked everyone around him. When John Godwin died, Horace King erected this monument in his honor. When the Civil War broke out, King secretly did not want the South to win, but felt forced to work for the Confederacy. From 1862 to 1864, King worked near the spot in the Columbus Iron Works, where he built a rolling mill that made ironclad boats. Through his work at the Iron Works, he became friends with Major James Warner, a chief engineer there. Because of the way King took responsibility for his work, Warner helped King's sons get a job at the Naval Yard, which kept them from going into battle. After the Civil War, times were still difficult for African Americans, but Horace King again took responsibility and worked hard as an entrepreneur. The South needed his skills to rebuild, and in 1867 he achieved the goal of becoming a contractor, winning the Columbus City bid to build another bridge over the Chattahoochee. He also built buildings like one behind me. This is City Mills, that a man named Seaborn Jones contracted Horace King to build in 1869 in Columbus to produce corn meal. Then, in 1867, something amazing happened that no one could have predicted in 1832 when Horace King built his first bridge. He was elected to the Alabama State Legislature to represent Russell County, Alabama. In that role, he was called the brightest and best member ever enrolled in the list of colored contingent. So, what would he do with this new position of responsibility? Would he use this new position to speak for civil rights and try to pass laws to help bring equality? The answer is sadly no. At that time, he focused more on his newly formed business as a contractor than being a legislator to advance rights. This may seem to us now a missed opportunity for a man like Horace King, who accomplished so much during the time of slavery, to be vocal for civil rights in government. But it's easy to say that now. Back then, there was so much animosity that King's livelihood and family could have been at stake if he would have taken more of a stand. This time in King's life taught me that it isn't always easy to stand up for rights, especially when it isn't popular and someone's livelihood depends on it. Horace King died on May 28, 1885, at 69 years old. He had 4 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom he taught bridge building and contracting. Horace King was inducted into the Alabama Engineering Hall of Fame in 1989. While this is a major accomplishment, the fact that he earned this award based on his work in the 1800s as a minority race, a slave, and living in the South is a testimony to the responsibility he took for himself and the rights he earned as a result. In his life, Horace King achieved prominence, freedoms, and responsibilities that few, if any, slaves had. In the end, for Horace King, the responsibilities he was given and the rights he earned for his time cannot be separated. They were woven together. Each made the other stronger, like the lattice of the town truss he used in so many of his bridges. It has been a privilege to to learn about Horace King and all that he has accomplished. It is my hope that you will remember him and the power that one person can have by abridging rights and responsibilities.